Hello, everybody. I'm here with my new friend Adrian, and we were going to meet tomorrow for coffee.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I just
yes.
ran into you today, so we're doing it today. And so you're from Australia.
That's right.
So many Australians here. Now, if you decide to stay here, you're going to make so many friends because there's so many nice guys from Australia here in the Philippines. Probably the number one nationality. I'd say Americans is second.
Wow.
And so, tell me a little bit about your background and stuff, like where you're from and how you grew up and stuff.
Yeah, sure, Mark. So, as Mark said, my name's Adrian. I'm from Melbourne in Australia. I've worked in disability for probably 33 years now. I've worked quite a lot during COVID because Melbourne was probably the most locked down city in the world. So in a way, it was the only way to see people. So I was working, crazy hours, but I knew it would end eventually anyway. So I managed to save quite a bit, which was good. So I've been going to Thailand, probably that started about 7 or 8 years ago, just for probably 2-3 times a year, just to have a chill out from work. And I loved it, and I don't really know why I didn't do it earlier. And I'm 56 and I've travelled a lot. I first travelled overseas when I was about 20, 21. And I went to India, and I've always meant to come to the Philippines, and I've been thinking about it for the last couple of years, and so now I finally pulled the pin.
So this is the first time you've ever been here?
First time for the Philippines.
Literally, you've just been here a day or two, right?
And I literally just got into Dumaguete half an hour ago, and I just thought I'd get out of the sun, and I looked up and it was ground zero.
Oh.
So
and I was here.
yeah, because Mark and I were going to catch up tomorrow, and then I saw Mark.
Wow. So, you talked a little bit about your financial situation earlier, and you're very well set financially. You don't have to worry. That's something you don't have to concern yourself about for the rest of your life, sounds like to me, which takes a huge amount of stress off, a guy's, that's thinking about retiring. So you could probably, live anywhere in the world you want. You could even afford to live in Europe if you wanted to. I've been to Australia many times, been to your city, Melbourne, beautiful city, nice people there. So why don't you want to live in the rest of your life in Australia and just say quit your job and retire and just have a nice life there in Australia?
I guess it comes down to, for me anyway, it's cost. It's the world all over right now. It's inflation.
Yeah.
And Australia's an expensive country. I'm fortunate I don't have a mortgage. I've paid that off. But I know a lot of my friends who are doing it tough. They are working.
If you wanted to rent a one-bedroom apartment in Melbourne where you live, what would that cost? This is a decent one, nothing fancy.
In Melbourne, one bedroom, could be anything. This is in Australian dollars, $2,000 a month.
Wow.
Easy. Depending whereabouts in Melbourne, definitely.
So here, I have a friend of mine who's got a really nice little apartment, a little 2-bedroom up in Valencia. He doesn't have a pool or anything, but it's a nice little property, gated and everything. He's paying $160 US a month, and I'm paying $600 for, my place on the beach. I've got another friend of mine who's paying the exact same amount as me, and he's got a house about the same size as mine on the beach, all private property and everything on 4 acres. He's paying $30,000 also.
Right.
And so there's just, that's where you really save the big money here, I think, is in rent, which is also true in Thailand.
Yeah. Thailand, it's similar in that sense. And but look, Melbourne, Australia. At the moment, for every house it's being rented out, there's a queue of people bidding to try and seal that deal. And
so there's a shortage of rentals.
There's a massive shortage of rentals, and of course that means the prices are going up, and interest rates have been going up.
What are you going to do with your house?
So I rent that out.
Yeah.
And if I was to live here, I'd rent that out as a part income to come in for living expenses.
You could almost live off that and not even have to touch your savings.
I'm pretty tight, and if I really pulled it tight, I probably could. But and I guess it's security knowing that there's something there if worst case scenario, whatever that may be. But so look, a lot of people are doing it tough, as I said, because of the economics of the current times we're in.
Yeah. But again, you don't have to worry about that. Like I know guys that have come here and all they've got is their Social Security, which is say $1,000 a month, and they've got some bills they pay out of there, like their credit cards and whatever. So they're even less, and they're surviving here. But so financially, you don't have to worry about that. So you can find like your dream house anywhere in the Philippines, whatever it is that is. If you want to be on the beach, you want to be in the mountains, you want to be in the city, whatever. A condo that's got all the amenities. All those options are yours, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And we've got all those things in Dumaguete. You can go to Cebu and find even more. But I think you'll be really happy here. It's just, and you talked earlier. Tell me a little more about like the stress in your life. You said like your job is very stressful.
Yeah. I work in disability, and I've been doing that for 33 years now. I've got a Bachelor of Applied Science and Disability Studies, and when I first started, a lot of people had diplomas or degrees in specialising in disability, and I've just seen over the last 3 decades it's just been almost dumbed down. Those degrees, those faculties no longer exist in disability. So the funding went from block funding from the government. They abolished that and they introduced a thing called the NDIS, which is the National Disability Insurance Scheme. So taxpayers pay a levy every year, and so the money now goes directly to the person. So there's all these organisations now who are trying to get part of this money to set up accommodation services or day placement services where people with disabilities can go to and be taking part in activities they want to do. As a result, to try and make more money, they just have dumbed down the requirements of staff they employ to work with people with disabilities. So, like I said, today you could be a taxi driver and tomorrow you could be working with people with disabilities.
Wow.
There's supposed to be a minimum qualification.
That's kind of scary. You're working with people that,
there's a minimum qualification. It's a certificate 4 in disability studies, but it's supposed to be mandatory, but it's not, because it's cheaper to employ someone without it. So while an employer may say, this is the minimum standard we require, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the people they're going to employ. And a driver's license, for an example, it's mandatory because you're taking people out in the community. But the amount of people that my employer, who's hopefully not watching, who employs, they don't have a driver's license.
Yes.
So you end up doing all the driving, and that's just another stress that's added. And then the paperwork now, it's just, the thing is with paperwork, I guess with any job, once you downloaded more paperwork, they don't repeal previous work. It just mounts up and builds up, and you're paid by the hour, not by the amount of time, and so the stress of getting things done by deadlines really builds up. And it's expensive in Australia, like other countries. So a lot of people are in the same position as I am, and in some ways I'm lucky, because the age I'm at, I'm glad this is happening. I'm 56. If this was to happen when I was 36, it'd be very different for me.
Yeah. Do you find a lot of people that are trying to get disability that aren't really disabled, like fraud? We have a lot of big problem with that in America.
Yeah, no, not so much, Mark. But what we do have is we have some people who work for the NDIS as a sole trader. They just get like a tax file number or an ABN. And they can work directly, so they get the full amount that you're paid by the hour. Whereas if you work for an employer, that employer will take half of that amount. Let's say it's $66 an hour, so you're paid 33, and they keep 33, but you're doing all the work. So there's an incentive in doing it yourself, as long as you've got the insurances, etc. That's required. But the problem is that it's being rorted. So I remember reading in the paper a couple of years ago where one guy was paid a Sunday rate, which should be a lot more than $66 an hour, to basically look after a guy who was on his own with a disability. And all he was doing, and it took a year before they caught up with him, was in the morning he'd pop in, he'd drop a litre of milk and a newspaper, and he'd take off. And he was claiming 8 hours pay for that whole day.
Jeez.
So it's actually the system that's open to abuse. More so, there's a lot of checks and balances for people in terms of applying to work with people with disabilities because of the nature of them being so vulnerable.
Well, being such a young guy, so if you decide to retire here and stay here, would you just enjoy your retirement, or would you think they would get involved in doing something online or a business, or you'd be okay just
I think I'd like to just enjoy not having that frenetic stress of going to work and then thinking the moment you get there, what time do I finish? You know, and pushing through it. And I guess the other thing, and I don't mean this in a snobbish or horrible way, but it'd be nice to retire in the sense that, you know, when you work, it's sometimes the people you work with, the only thing you've got in common is the carpet that you share under your feet. You know, you don't always choose who you work with. And there's some great people I work with, but unfortunately they've actually resigned as a result of what I've been talking about. And I think I'd focus on my fitness because it would free up so much time to go to the gym to do physical stuff, which I've made a priority in the last sort of 5-6 months. And I would probably do something with the internet, etc., because I have the time to do that. But it wouldn't be because I need the money. It would be just a hobby.
Yeah, something to do. How about in Australia? Do you have a lot of friends?
Yeah, I've got a lot of friends. I don't catch up as much because I guess they're around my age, and a lot of them have kids. My best friend, he's got 2 young ones. He married a little bit later in life. He's got, I think, like a 6 and an 8 year old, and he's probably 58. So he's really busy, and most people are. Most people work. Husband and wife, most people work to pay for the mortgage, etc., and kids. But I keep in touch on the phone, obviously, and we're all working.
I found that as a single guy, and I was about your age when I was single in America, I had neighbors and stuff, but I never got invited over their houses because they want to socialize with other couples. And when you're by yourself, it's hard to get invited to a party or a dinner or whatever when you're just by yourself.
Absolutely.
And I found that here, especially once I've been here a little while, you have so many invitations to do things. Hey, we're having a barbecue, we're going to taking a trip here, we're doing this, and you're constantly being invited to do things. And the more people you know, the more invitations you got, so you'll never get bored. I mean, I have the most active social life. I have a more active social life here than I had on the ship. So it's really good.
Look, in general, I don't understand how people can get bored. I mean, there's books, there's a million things you can do that don't cost money. I think what you said is really important too, though, about we get to a certain age, and I see it like in the West, it's like we live in a youth worship culture, especially with social media, with Instagram, with Facebook. It's all about people focusing on themselves and how good looking they are and body image, which is doing so much damage for young people. And not making the older people like ourselves feel much better anyway. But I just found that going to Thailand, they really respect the elderly. You know, they're revered.
Whereas they do here too.
And here in the West, it's the complete opposite. You hit a certain age, you're off the love list. And
you're invisible in America. Like usually a guy in his 50s or 60s go to a restaurant or bar and they don't even notice you. You're just ignored. I know. And you've got to make things happen as you get older. You've got to make the effort. You've got to invest in yourself, in not just health-wise, but also in what you do. You've got to be active. It helps to be an introvert here where, if you're down in immigration or you're in the grocery store in line, there's another expat in front of you, just say something, Hey, where'd you get that Campbell soup? I thought they were all out of that or whatever, You start a conversation, and I've kind of gotten used to doing that, and I met so many cool people just in passing, just starting a conversation with a total stranger, Well, yesterday I had... And everybody's friendlier. Like in America, if you start a conversation, someone comes up and wants to talk to you, you assume they're trying to rip you off or sell you something. And here they just want to get to know you.
Look, it's only a short time I've been here in the Philippines, but people have been incredibly friendly and really going out of their way in lots of ways. And it's been similar in Thailand, but I mean that just wouldn't happen at home. Everyone's sort of caught in their own little world.
They're in their own trap. So in your life, like one question I've been asking guys is like, so what's like the hardest thing you've ever had to go through in your life? Like the biggest challenge you look back and say, God, I'm so glad I got through that.
Oh, gee, there's probably a list of them. There's a few, but I guess one that came to mind, and and I learned a lot out of it, and I took it as a really valuable lesson. But in 2008, I had invested over a couple of years, probably about $230,000.
Ooh.
And anyway, long story short, it was a scam.
Oh no.
So I lost 220. And the other thing was, I didn't just lose it. It was money I'd borrowed from the bank
Oh my God.
that I had to pay back with interest.
Oh.
So I'm thinking, what are my options? Do I sell my house? Do I get another job? And I just thought, no, I'm just going to suck it up. And so I had a mortgage at the time too. So I added that to my mortgage. So I took on a second job. So I worked every weekend, and I worked in disability, and I worked at a house that no one wanted to work at. And so, of course, because of that, people were booking me up month in advance. So I remember in 1 year I worked, well, put it this way, in 1 year I remember I had 5 days off. I had a funeral, I had a wedding, and I think I had maybe 1 or 2 sick days, and that was it. And I did this for 4.5 years, and I paid it off.
Wow.
I paid the whole lot off.
Well, tell me about, did the guy get caught that scammed you, or was there any arrest made?
He got caught, and there was like a class action that you could take part in. I went to the initial preliminary meeting involved, and then I had my own lawyer at the time I spoke to, and he said, look, if you can somehow cut your losses and move on, you'll be better for it. And others were adamant, no, we're going to get our money back, we're going to get our money back. So I think psychologically it was healthier for me just to cut my losses and move on. So I paid all this off. So 5 years later, I was free of it. I was free of it mentally. I wasn't even thinking of it. But these people were about to go to court. And in the end, it's not that they didn't win, but the lawyers they had got all their money back for fees, and that was it, and everyone got nothing.
Yeah, the lawyers always get paid, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, people got a little bit, but, you know, they might have got, God, for the 200 something I lost, they might have got back 10 grand. So but for me, it wasn't devastating at the time because I had my devastation back 5 years prior. So for these people, it was a lot harder because that was their time of reckoning, and they realised, oh my God, because they believed they were going to get it back.
Yeah.
So I felt great because I'd moved on.
Let it go.
And the value in the lesson was that I thought, you know, we really overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can achieve in 5 years.
Right.
So I realised what I could do in 5 years. And so I kept doing it. So then I just kept going, and then I paid off my mortgage, and I kept going, and then I put some money in legitimate investments, and then in my super, in 401k for Americans, and just believing in, you know, there's good debt and bad debt, but end of the day, it's still debt. You know, if you've got no debt at all, and we hit a depression, well, you're still going to be far better off than the average person. So I think that's made me very risk adverse. And Mark and I were talking about before, just about retiring now, and there's a little thing in me, and I think it's a hangover from losing that money. It's just a psychological thing, but that was the hardest thing, but in some ways it taught me a really valuable lesson, you know, and that would be probably the hardest at the time.
What exactly was the scam? Like what?
Oh, it was trading in so-called some system of being able to yield higher yields in the stock market, and it was just all a scam. You know, and the guy got a slap on the wrist. He lost his financial license. They tried to take his house. The house was in his wife's name. The wife doesn't even work. How does she buy a house worth that amount of money? It all went pear-shaped. It just made me even feel greater that I'd moved on. You know, and it was a valuable lesson.
Yeah, hard lesson.
Hard lesson.
So much money. God.
But I'll make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. So on another note, like what you look back in your life, like what's the best thing? Like you look at the decision you made, say, I'm so glad I took that path instead of this one, or I'm so glad I made that decision, or this was a really lucky thing that happened to me.
Okay. Looking back, I think the best thing I did was when I was, I'd finished university, I'd worked for a couple of years full time, and then I thought I'll go overseas for 6 months. Just take a break, backpacking. And then that ended up spanning out to be probably nearly 2 years.
Wow.
And,
Where'd you go?
well, I was going to go to the UK because I had a working tourist visa. And back then that was good for 2 years, plus the amount of time you leave the UK, it stops, and then you come back and it starts again. So you could span that 2 years out quite a bit. So I went to the UK, went all around the UK. I worked, disability travels really well, so I worked in disability, in live-in care. Then I went to the Middle East, and this is all before September 11. So, you know, I went to Egypt and...
I love Egypt, I've been there too.
I loved it. And I met the most crazy people. And we partied pretty hard, and I was running pretty low on money, and I met this girl who couldn't get a divorce because she was married to a Islamic guy, and he had to divorce her. And so anyway, she's sleeping with a hotel manager, and then they let me stay very cheaply, and then I just did things, and they'd say, okay, go to the Nile Hilton and dress up like an Arab. So I went to the market, bought a Lawrence of Arabia gown, and I had a goatee at the time. Went there, took some photos, came back, got them developed, and they gave me 10 beers. Go there and dress up as a woman. So then we got a dress, shaved, bought a wig from the market, went back, another 10 beers. So I just have really fun memories about it. And I've got the photos to remind me of that. But
so good to do those things while you're young.
Yeah, and I went through Africa. I spent 9 months going through Africa overland.
Wow.
I was only going to go there for 2 weeks, and it's just the way it worked. And what I got out of that was that travel is the greatest educator, more so than...
Oh, I agree.
You won't learn anything from university compared to travelling on your own.
I agree.
And you travel on your own, you meet more people. If you're travelling with someone, people will always see you as a couple or two guys together.
Yep.
You're on your own,
That's a really good point.
People approach you if you're on your own. You throw yourself in situations when you're on your own. There's a freedom in travelling on your own that some people don't experience or are too scared to feel. And
it takes guts. A lot of guys are afraid to, travel, especially to another country, especially to the Middle East or Africa.
Yeah, and I've got friends, and I've got one friend, Craig. Hello, if you're watching, which I know you are. Travelling, it's the one thing when it comes to work that we and I look forward to. It's just, I just pick a place and I go. Like I said, the first time I travelled overseas, it was India, and I was 2021. I knew nothing. This is pre-internet, pre-mobile phones. Knew nothing about India. And I landed there, and it was like going back in time 100 years.
Yeah.
You know, the guards having their latest model 303 from 1942.
Yeah.
Travelling is such a great educator because of the people you meet.
Well, that's why you'll be so comfortable here in the Philippines. It's an easy place to get around, and you've traveled before, so there's nothing going to throw you like the infrastructure or the traffic or whatever. You'll just get used to it.
That's right. And look, as we said, like Thailand, which I've been to quite a lot and I love, it's 4 hours away or something?
Yeah, not even that, So what's your plan now? Like, you just been here a couple of days, what's on the agenda?
Well, doing this interview now, it feels like just ringing my boss after this and resigning from work, but I'll wait and see. But yeah, look, I came here to Dumaguete because I wanted to have a look around. I needed the break from work, and I really wanted to come here and just sit back and just recalibrate and really think about the bigger picture of life and what I want to do. But the Philippines is something that I've been thinking about. I've always thought Thailand is the place I would retire to, but the one thing I'm really starting to appreciate is the ability of English being spoken here. And
all the documents are in English. You get a driver's license, marriage license, all English.
In Thailand, it's all in Thai, and that's a really attractive thing. And even
it makes life easier.
It does, and even in just telling a joke or something, instead of having to translate the joke at the same time, you can just be yourself.
Yeah, makes it much easier,
and you meet more people.
And so, you have plans to go back to Australia? You get a round trip ticket, or what's
I've got a round trip ticket. Yeah,
when are you going back?
I'm going back in about 3 weeks.
3 weeks, okay.
And I'm really doing the hard think on work because you know, I don't want to wait till I get. I'm 56 now. I don't want to wait till I get to a point where I may not have the health to do the things I want to do, and tomorrow's not a given. And we're constantly reminded of that if we just pick up a paper or we look at the news on our phone and we see the latest celebrity who's died or passed away. Well, there's lots of other people who aren't celebrities like us that die just equally as
I
as
meet
much.
them all the time because that's like the pond I swim in was older guys, you know. So I see guys die, and a lot of them much younger than me too. Just suddenly, you know. And so, you know, I said before off camera, like it's one thing if you love your job and love what you're doing, then I say, you know, do it as long as you can because that's your identity. You love doing it. But if you're not happy, and it sounds like you're not happy in your job, and you've got the financial security which you've got, you know, what's stopping you? You know, I would just like, you know, tomorrow just like make your decision and come here or Thailand, wherever you want to go. You can go anywhere in the world, you know. But I would just, you know, cut the cord and, you know, make the decision. But once you go home, be here, you know, spend your few weeks here, and go home, and you can just really compare. Like you can visualize what life would be like here, and what life, you know, what life's already like in Melbourne and with your job, and make the decision. But I think you really like it here. I mean, so many Australians I know that have come here with all kinds of different backgrounds. Most of them nowhere near as financially secure as you are, who are doing great. They're really happy. You know?
And that is one thing too, and that's one of the attractions for some people who financially might be in a little bit more of a pickle. But I think this is what I found with Thailand anyway. It's just the way of life. Everything just slowed down.
Yeah.
And things like traffic lights didn't annoy me. Noise doesn't annoy me because
You don't have traffic lights here.
that's probably why. But yeah, just you just notice a difference. I noticed just in the last few days, just not working every day for 13, 14 days straight, day off. And it gets to the point, if you're younger, if you're 20, you know, that extra $2,000-3,000, it can mean a lot. But as you get older, that $2,000 or $3,000 doesn't mean as much because time now becomes far more valuable.
You
can't buy time back.
Every day you're throwing money on that pile, making the pile bigger and bigger, and so someday you're going to die, and somebody else is going to get all that money because you're not going to be able to spend
that's true.
it. You know, and so, but you can't get those days back. Every day you're sitting at your desk, you know, working at a job you don't like is a day you don't get back.
Yeah.
And you could be standing on the beach. You could be with a lovely Filipina, you know, touring around. You could be doing so many other things.
That's true.
That are priceless.
That's true. And you know, like I said, travel's something that I've always I've really enjoyed and got a lot out of. And to do that, you require time. So
the world's opened back up now, so you can travel again.
Yeah.
And, you know, here in the Philippines, you know, you're close to a lot of cool places.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for sharing your story, Adrian, and I hope things work out for you. I just got a sense that you're going to be really happy here, and it's going to work out great for you, and it's going to be a whole nother chapter in your life, you know, something to look forward to. And you're so fortunate that you're young. You know, you're obviously in good condition and good health, and so you got many, many years of, you know, a great life, you know, here in the Philippines or wherever you decide to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thanks for that.
So thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Cheers.